Wars have never been for the people. People have been used as bullets and bricks and proxies. Every single time the US goes to war in the Gulf region, those are not wars even. Those are actually invasions or interventions.
Yeah.
People's brains are basically invaded before the actual invasions happen. Saddam Hussein had declared 5 years prior to the invasion, we will no longer sell Iraqi crude oil and gas for the dollars. We want to teach them a lesson. So that is why Saddam Hussein was taken out. What was the official story for invading Iraq?
Yeah, what was it?
The official story was that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and there was this dictator in power, Saddam Hussein. It is another story that Saddam Hussein was a US puppet for many years. You know, there are 3,500 sanctions against Iran.
3,500 sanctions.
Ideally, India shouldn't have been importing oil from Iran, right? But it does not happen that way. India still imports oil from Iran, and do you know how it pays Iran?
You said in your book that Iran will not be invaded but potentially bombed.
Yeah.
What is it that about Iran, what is it about Israel that media is not at all showing, but we must know? This podcast is with Nadeem Siraj. He is a fantastic journalist and an equally fantastic author, talking about the geopolitics, Iran, Iraq, Israel, US, China, India, and the world that we live in. I hope it makes sense. So when was it in your life or your career that you started figuring out power or resisting it or debating it?
This thing happened. It did not happen like a turning point. It was simmering slowly. Then a time came when the revolution happened in Egypt in 2010, I think.
Okay.
And I was very closely following that revolution I was in Muscat at that time. I spent a few years over there. So I realized that Facebook was used. Silicon Valley deployed Facebook to fan the revolution. And the revolution was against the corrupt local government. So it was natural from the point of view of the people who were participating in it, but it was being engineered from outside. So at that point, I realized that that's it. So we have to stop believing in what we are being told. There are forces at play. So who are these forces at play? And then I realized there's nothing called governments and countries. Governments and countries are, of course, they are there. They're real things, but they're on the lower strata of the cloud of power. Higher up, there are other things that are more complex for us to understand. We can sense it, but we don't know them for sure, who exactly they are.
And why?
You also can't get into their minds. I mean, you
Yeah.
never know. I mean, look at the Jeffrey Epstein revelations. They would do that on an island. I mean, can you imagine? Can you just imagine?
No, that brain is beyond
No,
comprehension.
it is beyond comprehension. Or maybe the movie Eyes Wide Shut, which and he was killed. Stanley Kubrick was killed.
So then what happened when you realize that power is not what we are told?
We are told, yeah.
Yeah. And it's actually a more complex web over and beyond that. Then what happened?
Then I realized that I was in the mainstream media by then. I realized that we are kind of doing a disservice to the public by telling them that this is the deep truth that we are telling, when it's not the deep truth. We were just telling people what was happening on the surface. We ourselves did not know what was deep inside, so we could not go deep inside. So my thing was that I have to get off the mainstream media someday or the other, and I could start my own thing where we would say some of the deep stuff, whatever is possible. And secondly, educate people into connecting dots, learn to connect the dots, and don't over-respect the mainstream media.
Is there, in the last maybe 10, 15 years, is there a difference in the way wars are created, covered, and compelled?
Wars are absolutely created, and most wars are connected. They are not like isolated flashpoints that have nothing to do with each other. You know, why I'm saying they're connected is because how human civilization functioned over the last few thousand years is we've seen empires coming and going.
Yeah.
So at any given point of time, when one empire wants to outdo the other, it wants to become number one. Number one is already there. Number two becomes strong. Number one becomes weak. Number two wants to take over. It is at that point you will see, you will see the tectonic shift happening. So that means there'll be flashpoints all over the world. So right now we have the US as the de facto imperialist power of the world.
Yes.
It's been like that since 1944 mostly. So but in the last 30 years, we saw China rising very fast.
Yeah.
That's also now the number 2 empire in the world.
Yeah.
So they want to become number 1.
Yeah.
So number 1 and number 2, they are at loggerheads now. On some fronts, they work together. But on most fronts, they are now fighting with each other, vying for that number 1 spot, vying for the crown. So that's why a lot of flashpoints are happening. So you see, Russia is also almost like an empire.
Yeah.
So they're a different entity. So they have paired up with the Chinese so-called empire to outwit US as an empire.
Yeah.
So that's why there are flashpoints that are related to Russia. There are flashpoints related to China. There are flashpoints in the Middle East because the US has all its interests in the Middle East or West Asia, whatever you call it. So these flashpoints or wars, they are all connected. They're part of this larger fight of empires. Wars have never been for the people. People have been used as bullets and bricks and proxies in a war. That has always happened in the wars in the past as well. They are happening in the wars that we are seeing right now as well. People are caught in the crossfire. And unfortunately, they are not just caught in the crossfire. They are not just running helter and skelter, looking for help. They have also been brainwashed to be part of the war. So there's a faction that is told to go with A. There's a faction that is told to go with B. So they think that they are part of the war.
Yeah.
They are used as they are used as ammunition. They're used as ammo as part of the war.
Yeah.
But actually they are the victims. One very good example is the war that happened in the Ukraine. So in the eastern part of Ukraine, you saw what happened.
Yeah.
So they went hammer and tongs
Yeah.
at each other. So Russia used its people to rally behind the government, right? That we have to go for this war. We have to take Ukraine back because we cannot let America just run away like this and then do whatever they want.
Yeah.
We have to stand up to them. So there was this hyper-nationalism that was created. The same thing happened in Ukraine itself. All the people of Ukraine were told to stay put. Let's fight together. Let's fight. Let's stand up to Russia. Let's be with our foreign allies as well, which is America. And the American public were told that, okay, we have to send a lot of bombs, ammunition, and a lot of things to Ukraine to help them stand up to Russia because Russia is our big enemy. So guys, let's all come together. So the Americans were told to be gung-ho and let's rally behind the Americans and the Ukrainians. So it's the same script for the public in different parts of the world on both sides of the fence. And it's in much the same way the Gulf Wars also happened. Every single time the US goes to war in the Gulf region, those are not wars even. Those are actually invasions or interventions.
Yeah.
So you see, before in the build-up, they always rally public opinion. The American state machinery, they first tell the world that, okay, here is a rogue nation. We have to go after them. They have weapons of mass destruction, or they have nuclear ambitions, or they have a human rights violation ka record. So we have to go after them. Then they tell the American public that, look, we are having hard times, but we are the most important country in the world. We are the most powerful democracy in the world. So let us just stand up to them and let us show them what we are. Let's teach them a lesson. So the American people are like, okay, right, let's go. Let's have another war. So that is how it works.
Can you explain US imperialism to someone who does not know the history of it?
In a very simple way, if I say this, we don't have to make it very complex. We don't have to go into economic jargons and all that. We just have to tell them a simple story that starts in 1944 and up until now.
Okay.
That timeline will explain the whole thing in very simple words. See, 1944 was the time when the Second World War was coming towards an end. So that was the time when imperialism was changing hands. Before that, we had the British Empire running the whole world, right? So pound was the reserve currency in the world. So they used to control the world with their military power and the pound. 1944, Second World War, Britain falls. So US realizes that it is now the new power. So US, although it's a country, it kind of, in an undeclared way, it tells the whole world that I am the new imperialist power. I am now number one. I am the king of the world now. So how does it happen? In 1944, there's a meeting that takes place in New Hampshire in the US, in the town called Bretton Woods. It's called the Bretton Woods Conference now.
Okay.
So Mount Washington Hotel, where the heads of state of 44 countries, they were called into that hotel. And US officials were there. They had a gala few days over there. And over there, it was declared that, okay, US is now the undeclared champion of the world. And the US dollar from now on is going to be the global reserve currency. And how is going to be the most powerful currency in the world? It is going to be pegged or linked to the gold. So any country, all the countries were told that if you have a lot of US dollars, you can exchange that for gold and vice versa. So suddenly dollar was declared as the most powerful currency in the world.
In that one conference.
In that one conference. Some other things also happened. The IMF was created during that conference. The World Bank Group was created in that conference. It was called IBRD at that time. Later on, it started to be called the World Bank. So those financial bodies are behemoths. We know them now.
Yeah.
Over the years, they went from country to country, giving loans and bankrupting them and troubling them in various ways.
Yeah.
So when the Bretton Woods Conference happened, that was the start of the modern day US empire in an undeclared way. So 1944 to 1970, US was the undisputed champion, but something happened towards the end of the 1960s. Why I said 1970s? Because towards the end of the 1960s, the US was so overconfident as an imperial power of the world. First of all, they had militaries all over the world.
Yeah.
They have about officially 550 military bases all over the world. Unofficially, it is more than 850. A lot of people from inside the US, they say that, researchers. And which the Pentagon has not denied even. And apart from that, the dollar was very powerful. So what the US was doing was that it was pumping in more dollars into the system for convenience. It wanted more dollars into the global economy. It kept pumping in. There was a time when the dollars that were in the market, they outweighed the gold that was there with the US. So many of the countries during the late 1960s, they realized that the US has a war economy. They are in Vietnam, they are going here and there, they're fighting wars in Korea and all that in the past. So something is wrong with the US over here. So they were suspecting that the US may not have the gold that they say they have to back up the dollar. So various countries started telling the US that, can you give us gold in exchange for the dollars that we have? So one of those countries was France. France told the US, okay, we are giving you all the dollars back, give us gold, which was our agreement in 1944. So the US started dilly-dallying. In the late 1960s, the US said that, no, they didn't directly say that, no, we don't have it, They said something else. That, okay, now is not the time. There's a war going on. There's this war, that war. We have our own economic problems. Forget it. It'll happen later. Suddenly in 1971, the Wall Street, the most powerful people who run the Wall Street, who run the Pentagon, who run the whole US deep state system, they made the US President, Richard Nixon, make an announcement in 1971. It's famously called the Nixon Shock now. So in that announcement, the Nixon announces that the dollar is no longer linked to the gold. So do not ask for gold anymore. We are no longer responsible for this.
Wow.
But we are still the most powerful country in the world.
So convenient.
Yeah. So everything is in doldrums. But the problem is the US itself also fell into trouble now, because now the dollar's credibility is gone. When the dollar's credibility was gone, so was the credibility of the White House, the Pentagon, and the whole state machinery of the US, even the IMF and World Bank and all that. So the US has been thinking what to do. So they came up with a new plan. They came up with a trump card. It's called the petrodollar system. It sounds very heavy and economics
petrodollar
driven.
System.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll just go into that in a very simple way. We'll drop the economic jargon and all that.
Okay.
So in 1974, the US devises a plan. Since we cannot link the gold to the US dollar, we don't have that much gold, we will link something else to the US dollar. So which is the most precious resource in the world today? That is crude oil, which is produced by the Middle Eastern countries mostly. So we will link the dollar to crude oil in such a way so that the dollar again becomes the king. So the dollar becomes the global reserve currency again, and nobody can again bring it down. Everybody will want the dollar. So how to do that? So what they did was that there was a secret meeting. It's like a thrilling spy story.
Seriously?
Yeah. So Nixon and Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State at that time, they called up the two guys from their Treasury Department, William Simon and Jerry Parsky, who used to work at the Treasury Department. So these two guys were sent to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on a secret mission.
Okay.
Nobody knew. The entire US press had no idea that this was happening. The press in the Middle East did
US
not even
press also did not know.
US press did not know. Nobody knew a word about it.
Wow.
And in the Middle East, there was no press anyway. So these two guys went to Jeddah in the summer of 1974.
Okay.
So they met King Faisal over there, and their mission was to give them a plan, which to give them a deal that they could not refuse. So what was the deal? The deal to the Saudi Arabians was that you are the biggest oil producing country in the world right now, and you have a lot of friends in the Middle East. So let's do this. Why don't you start selling all your crude oil only for the US dollar? Secondly, the prices have to be kept up. They have to be kept at a very high at a high threshold.
Nothing reasonable.
Because the reason is, when the money comes in, at least 51% of that money you have to reinvest into the US economy. How will you do that? You will either park that money into our banks, or you will buy US treasury bonds, US financial instruments, or you will make various investments that we will tell you in the US. So basically that money has to come into the US economy.
Okay.
Thirdly, with the money that you have for yourself, you have a good time, but you have to spend a good amount of it in buying the defense equipment that we produce, because we need good buyers of the expensive ammunition and equipment and the fighter jets and the missiles and the bombs that we produce. So you have to buy all that. So Saudi says, so what if we refuse? What's in it for us?
Yeah.
So they said that what's in it for you is two things. Number one, you are a dictatorship, so we will keep you in power. We will not let any democracy to happen in the Gulf region. We've never seen any democracy in the Gulf region.
Yeah.
So there won't be any democracy. There won't be any uprising, revolution, or revolt against you. You will firmly be in power. We will ensure that with our security, our military security, and our intelligence. Secondly, we will protect you. If you sign on the dotted lines, we will protect you from a hostile attack from Israel, because Israel is your enemy, is your ideological enemy in the West Asian region. So we will protect you from that. And if you don't agree with our deal, we can't help you if your monarchy falls, and we can't help you if Israel attacks you. So don't blame us for that.
And these guys didn't have that confidence.
They didn't have that confidence. They didn't have that muscle power also to stand up to it.
They actually thought that they could be in trouble if they didn't sign these lines.
Because they are also tin pot dictators over there in the Gulf region. They are not elected or naturally chosen leaders of the country. So they saw that, okay, this is an opportunity. We will get immunity to be in power for a long time. We are a kingdom. So this is how it operates. So this was a deal of convenience. So King Faisal signed on the dotted lines. This deal was done.
What a brilliant, smart move from US.
Absolutely. This is called the petrodollar system. And what happened? What was the result of? What was the outcome? Now, the outcome was that the rest of the world, everyone who bought crude oil from various countries, they had to keep US dollars. There was no other way. So if a country disliked the US, if a country was not an ally of the US, did not want to be a pet of the US, did not want to be a sidekick, they would still have to reluctantly get hold of US dollars to buy crude oil. So crude oil becomes the number one currency, the most powerful currency in the world.
So gold is easily ignored.
Gold is gone.
Easily ignored. The word is changed. Statement
crude oil becomes the new gold.
Because now the
black gold becomes the real gold now.
Wow.
So this is the petrodollar system. Now we are in the mid 70s. So this goes on. Everybody is now on board, including Iran, because in Iran at that time, the Shah family was in power. Then in 1979, the Iranian revolution happens. Again, that's also, I wouldn't like to call it a revolution. It was a change in power. So the Shahs went away and Ayatollah came in charge.
But that was because the Iranian people were not happy with the Shah leadership.
Iranian people were not happy with the Shah, like they are not happy with the Ayatollah also, for various reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
But at that time, that whole uprising that happened there was because of, was it Iranian people induced, or was it also externally infused?
Partly externally infused, but mostly the Iranian people also did not like the Shah, did not like Reza the Reza Shah to be in power for a long time. They did not like his policies because he was, he was modernizing at a very quick pace. Certain things that the people were not able to adopt very easily. So he was doing a lot of things. Many of his moves were correct in terms of human rights and all that, but people did not like these things because he was not handling the Iranian economy very well at that time. Iranian economy was leaking oil money like anything. So the Iranians realized that the oil money, we are at such a rich country potentially, but where is our oil money going? It is going to the West. So why should we keep this guy in power? So these things were playing on people's mind, but then also they didn't realize that when the Ayatollah comes to power, he is going to brutally hack human rights.
We can see it today.
Yeah, we can see it today.
Yeah.
So in 1979, when there was this change of guard in Iran, then Iran became the first country that started protesting the petrodollar system. They said that let us de-dollarize, let us try to delink from this petrodollar system or the petrodollar mafia that the US has started. Let us come out of this. So they started trading crude oil in various currencies, not just the dollar. So if they were first selling for only dollars, they brought it down to 50%, then 40%, then 30% over the years. They started reducing it. Other countries also started doing it. Then Iraq.
So they went back to trading in local currencies.
Not entirely.
Some part of it.
Some part of it.
Dheere dheere himmat kariye.
So it was a protest. So US got angered by all these things. US saw that, okay, we are the empire. We will lose our status of an empire if the dollar loses relevance. And the dollar will lose relevance if people start disbelieving in the petrodollar system. So we'll have to punish these guys. They could not do anything to Iran because Iran as a civilization and as a society is very strong. It's not very easy to invade Iran, unlike many other West Asian countries. So they decided to go after the others. So later on we saw in 2003, Iraq was invaded. What was the official story for invading Iraq?
What was it?
The official story was that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and there was this dictator in power, Saddam Hussein. It is another story that Saddam Hussein was a US puppet for many years. So later on, when Saddam Hussein decided to come out of the petrodollar system, he suddenly became a villain. He became a dictator. So he was
made to look like a villain.
He was made to look like a villain and a dictator. And they declared that, okay, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Although unproven, we are going to prove that. So they went in, they invaded Iraq. That was the official story. What was the actual story? Saddam Hussein had declared 5 years prior to the invasion that we will no longer sell Iraqi crude oil and gas for the dollars. We will sell it for various currencies, mostly for euros and some for gold. So if countries want to buy Iraqi oil, you're welcome to do that with your own currencies or give us euros or give us gold, but don't bring US dollars. We want to teach them a lesson. So that is why Saddam Hussein was taken out. Same thing happened in 2011 in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi was in power. So Gaddafi had declared before the chaos in Libya, the foreign interventions in Libya, that we will have something called a gold dinar. We will create an African gold dinar, a new African currency, which will be gold backed or whatever it will be. We will not sell Libyan oil and gas for the dollar. We will sell it for this new currency or gold or euros or any other basket of currencies that people want to buy from. If India says we will give you rupees, is it fine with you? We will say fine. That's how the system is going to be. What happened to Gaddafi? We saw what happened to him. The same thing happened with Syria as well. We saw foreign intervention and chaos, and then Bashar al-Assad fell. Official story was that he was a dictator. The truth is that he wanted to go against the petrodollar system. He also defied US plans to build some oil pipelines and gas pipelines that would pass through Syria for convenience. So he went against those plans because he said that I don't like the petrodollar system, so I will not allow your plans to use my territory. So he also went. So now who is the final frontier that is left? Iran. Iran right now does not sell any of its oil and gas for dollars.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
Okay.
It could only be a minuscule, less than 0.5%, not more than that.
Wow.
So Iran has done something very interesting. In the south of Iran, in the Persian Gulf, they have an island called Kish Island. On that island, about 10 years back or 15 years back, they built something called an Iranian oil bourse. So what is that? That is basically a stock exchange for crude oil and gas.
That's such a brilliant idea.
Now, in that stock exchange, the US dollar is not even listed as a currency. Forget being traded. It does not even exist. So if you go into that stock exchange,
give a US
as a
dollar,
broker
they won't
or as an
recognize
official,
it.
you will not see. It's not listed. It's not there on the boards. It's not there in the systems.
They don't even know about US dollar.
Yeah, it does not even exist.
So what does this stock exchange do?
It trades crude oil. So you can buy and sell crude oil.
But how is it different from trading it otherwise?
It is different from selling it to various countries. It is not for public consumption. It is for B2B purposes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. The US wants to invade Iran, but the US is very clever. It doesn't want to tell, see, this is how US imperialism works. It doesn't want to tell the world that my source of power is the dollar as a reserve currency. It does not want the people to know the secret. So it says other things. It tells the world that, okay, Iran has nuclear weapons. Iran has a human rights problem, which is of course true.
Yeah.
Fine. Iran
but how much you inflate it and what do you use it for is the problem.
You are weaponizing it for your hidden agenda.
For your agenda, yeah.
So, and Iran has a dictator in place. Iran does not have democracy. We are a democracy. So these are the things that the US cites to go and try. So every 2-3 years, you'll see that there are escalations where the US pressures Iran and an atmosphere is created where you almost feel like the US is going to invade Iran, but eventually they target them in various ways. Either they'll impose sanctions or they'll drop some bombs or they'll send in Israel against Iran and all that. You know, there are 3,500 sanctions against Iran right now.
I want to know about this.
Yeah.
So
it's not about 1 or 2 sanctions.
Yeah. 3,500 sanctions.
And more than 3,000 of them are just from the US government itself. The others are from US allies.
But let's decode it simply. What does a sanction really mean? And who is US to put a sanction? And 3,000?
Yeah, 3,000. So
who controls Iran?
It is almost the US that is controlling Iran in this sense. See, the whole idea, what is a sanction? A sanction is you're kind of isolating a place from interacting or transacting with the rest of the world.
Okay.
So like, for example, if Iran sells crude oil to say 80 countries in the world, say 50 countries are US allies. So US tells those 50 countries that we are going to topple your governments if you continue buying Iranian oil. So stop buying Iranian oil, buy oil from us or buy oil from our allies like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait or anybody else, but not Iran. So that is one way of sanctioning them. So that's one kind of sanction.
Okay.
The other is Iranians have a lot of, the Iranian government has a lot of assets all over the world, like every country has. So the best thing is to freeze them if they're in the ally countries. If Iran has a lot of bank accounts, Iranian government has bank accounts and assets in Canada or say in the UK, the US has told these governments to just freeze them, cut off access of the Iranians to their own assets. That is one way of sanctioning them. Then Iranian scientists, when Iranian scientists are they're known to be very intelligent and they're very
innovative.
Very, very innovative.
Yeah.
Very self-reliant also.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have to collaborate with scientists from other parts of the world. So once again, sanction them. They should not get visas to travel anywhere in the world. They should not be allowed to even go out of Iran. If they have assets outside of the country, if a scientist has a place in France somewhere, just like that, just cut him off from that place. That's it. That's also a sanction.
But it might sound like a very stupid question, but I must ask: who is US to decide this about Iran or any other country, and why should these allies listen to US? Like,
it's a very important question. That why is it that people listen to them?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they are the biggest imperialist power today in the world. It is very difficult to defy the US because they'll do 10,000 things to you that will harm you in various ways, not just through sanctions. They can topple your government. They will send in the intelligence. They will cause a lot of disruptions. They can cause revolutions, revolts. They can tank your economy in various ways. They will antagonize allies around you, and who were your allies will now become America's allies, and then they will go against you. So a lot of these things can happen.
And
in
all
trade,
of the
in also trade. Every country is now connected to all other countries in various ways because of trade.
Yeah.
No country is fully self-reliant, right?
Yeah.
So the US generally uses trade as a very important weapon of threatening countries to do this and to do that. If you don't listen to us, we will cut you off from trade. You'll not get to import important vital medicines. Iran doesn't get to import a lot of life-saving medicines, even for cancer treatment, because the US has cut them off from that market.
But where would they normally get these medicines from?
They would have gotten it from the US or from many other countries, wherever these pharmaceutical companies are.
So basically, because most of the pharmaceuticals companies are in the US, they
Not
said,
necessarily most. Iran generally used to import these things even from Russia, from China and all that.
So the US cannot tell Russia not to get.
US has imposed more sanctions on Russia than on Iran. Russia is the world's most sanctioned country today.
Correct.
So even if China
I'm just trying to understand the psychology of
it is blackmail.
Sanctions.
It is blackmail. It is arm twisting. It is like surrounding your house with my men. So there'll be no water supply, there'll be no electricity supply, you'll get nothing. If you listen to us, then we will remove the embargo.
And governments and economies take it seriously because they
have
can
to take it seriously because the governments, because the US has military footprints all over the world. No? Think about it. 850 military outposts all over the world. That's huge.
And the biggest manufacturers of weapons and defense equipment.
Absolutely. Think about it. There was this, whenever we talk about US imperialism, this and especially when US talks about nuclear ambitions of other countries. So this story comes to my mind from 1500 years back. Saint Augustine of Hippo, he had written a book, City of God. In City of God, there is a story, a very interesting story, where he writes Alexander the Great, his men, they catch a small pirate and his little boat. So they capture the boat and they tie up this guy and they parade him and they bring him in front of the king. So Alexander he likes to micromanage everything. So he meets this guy and he thunders at him. He says that, how dare you molest the sea? So this guy tells him, how dare you molest the oceans? So Alexander is taken aback. Then this guy says that I am a small guy doing what I do with my small boat in this little part of the sea. And you, with your huge navy, your massive fleet, you are molesting the oceans. You are called an emperor and I am called a pirate. Because I am the smaller criminal, I am a criminal, and you are the bigger criminal, you are the emperor. So this story fits in with how US functions when it comes to nuclear weapons. Who has nuclear weapons today in the world? It's the US, UK, France, China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Israel, these 9 countries, and Iran is going to have it pretty soon if it is not invaded. So among these 9 countries that already have, which is the only country that has used nuclear weapons on civilian populations? It's the US. They bombed Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. And they obliterated the population of Hiroshima. They did not stop at that. They knew what they had done. 3 days later, they had 3 days time. 3 days later, another one was scheduled. They did not call it off. They went ahead with another one. They bombed Nagasaki to bits. So twice they wiped out civilian populations. That country has the cheek to tell everyone else, to be responsible and to be accountable when it comes to nuclear weapons. Has anybody else used it? Nobody else has used it. And the US is the only country, not the only country, Russia has also done it. The US has its nuclear weapons posted on standby mode in other countries that don't have nuclear weapons. In Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, France, Turkey as well, these 5 countries. And Russia has nuclear weapons posted in Belarus, but not a lot, a little bit. So look at the audacity of the US.
आप वही कर रहे हो जो आप लोगों को ना करने के लिए बोल रहे हो.
So when we do it, it's fine. We do it for peace. When you do it, you are a rogue nation. You can't be doing this thing.
Damn. You said in your book that Noam Chomsky said that Iran will not be invaded, but potentially bombed.
Yeah. That is precisely what we saw happen this time.
That is what he said. It's come true.
He has his reasons as well, because he keeps saying that unlike many other Gulf countries, Iranian civilization is a little different.
How?
In the sense that they are more resilient to external, they do not very easily allow boots on the ground like the other Gulf countries let in Tehran, Shiraz, Isfahan, even in southern Iran, near around the Bandar Abbas area. What I noticed is that they are a very robust, self-reliant economy. So they, even their automobile companies are local. Their fast food chains are local. Most of the industries also.
No brands, no international brands.
No, not very few of them. You would very rarely see a Samsung board or a Sony board over there. So it's their own companies that run the show. So it also happens in a very decentralized way. You do not have massive corporations, massive MNCs like the Silicon Valley types
sitting there.
It's very decentralized. They run their own thing in a way. One of the reasons why they could do this is because they've been sanctioned for a long time, since the early 1980s by the Western world.
So they have been building these muscles for survival.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why Chomsky has always felt that at best they are going to bomb Iran or they're going to threaten them with sanctions. And precisely that's what's happening.
That's what's happening.
Israel bombed Iran, US bombed Iran, that's it.
Yeah.
But nobody moved in to take parts of Iran and all that.
Because they're tough nut to crack.
And also Iran has a trump card also, up its sleeve. It controls the Strait of Hormuz, from where 20% of the world's crude oil passes every day. About 100 or 120 ships carrying crude oil passes through that small chicken's neck.
Yeah.
It's about 33 to 50 kilometers wide at certain parts.
Yeah.
So Iran controls that.
Such a small thing, but controls 20%.
Yeah. On the other side, on the other bank, there is Oman and the UAE. But Iran has more muscle power in that sense, in terms of controlling that stretch of the sea.
So because if that gets disrupted, everything else is going to be. So bana ke to rakhni padegi Iran se.
So Iran uses that as a bargaining chip
against
the US in a very correct way.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, you have something. Yeah. But that stretch has also become the irony of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this whole all the Arab nations, considering that they're all at war, and like 6 of them have already vanished from right in front of our times. Like Iraq has gone, like all Syria has struggled, all of that, right, apne samne in the last so many years. So what could be a reason why they don't unite? Why? I mean, if all united, in the Middle East, that itself could be such a superpower. Is it religion?
No, it is not religion. It is something else. US has a massive military presence in the Middle East itself. They are going to obliterate these monarchies. Nowadays, it's no longer about, painful invasions. They can do precision strikes and they can just take out these palaces. That's it. Secondly, US allies are going to align with the US and they are going to kind of impose sanctions on these monarchies and they're going to cut them off. Because these monarchies, they don't produce a lot of things on their own.
Yeah.
They just sell oil and gas and they import everything single thing else. Except for dates. So if they're cut off from everything, from medicines to everything, then they are finished. So they can't go against the system. They're caught in that trap.
What is it that about Iran, what is it about Israel that media is not at all showing, but we must know?
About Iran, the petrodollar system and Iran's fight against the dollar, that is not at all there in the mainstream media. You will not find a lot of mainstream media talking about it. You will hear about people talking about and writing about Iran's nuclear weapons and their atomic ambitions and all that. Let's give it to them that yes, Iran is hiding something. It is building nuclear weapons. But this is not the Iran that we are supposed to know. There are other facets of Iran that we are supposed to know. Like Iran's fight against sanctions that have been imposed on them.
Yeah.
How they're coping with that. Vital medicines are not coming in. They're not getting hold of a lot of know-how, technical know-how as well for a lot of things in this day and age. So those things are not.
That's what they're fighting for, and that of course we don't hear of it.
Even women's rights in Iran, that is projected in a very formative way. It is clubbed as women's rights. It's a very selfish thing for men to say it's women's rights. It's like it's not our problem; it is their problem. They can solve it. It's actually a human rights problem.
Yes.
If 50% of the population is facing rules and regulations that are absolutely weird and archaic.
Yeah.
then it is everybody's problem.
It's everybody's problem. Exactly.
So it is not projected, it is not discussed in that way. Like in Iran, some of the rules it's very weird. An Iranian woman, she cannot go bicycling in a public place or in a public park on her own. So she's allowed to go cycling, but only in her backyard or in her neighborhood if there are not of people, if people are not around, or in the dead of the night if the streets are empty, they're fine.
That's a law. That's a rule.
That's not law. That's a rule of the moral police. To get a visa to travel abroad, an Iranian woman has to get formal permission of either the husband or the elder brother or the father, just to get a visa to travel abroad.
To travel outside of Iran,
yes,
you need permission of the men in your life.
Yes, if you're an Iranian woman and you decide, okay, I'm going to chill out in the Mediterranean tomorrow, I'm having a bad time with my dad. So your dad needs to give you the permission to go for a visa. You'll not get that.
Wow. Call it freedom.
Yeah. An interesting story about Iran that is never there anywhere. There was a time when the hijab was banned in Iran.
Banned?
It was banned in Iran.
When was
Wearing the hijab was banned. In 1936, when the first Pahlavi king came to power in Iran in 1929, he was in power from 29 to 1941.
Okay.
So in 29, he came to power. In 35, he declared that Iran is no longer the imperial state of Iran. It is now a country. So it was not. It was called the imperial state of Persia.
Okay.
Then it was named Iran in 1935.
As a country.
Yeah. Iran, by the way, is its original name. Persia is not the authentic name. Persia was the name that was given by the Greeks who had invaded Iran many years back.
Okay.
So many people think that Persia is the
main
and
the good old word. So it's not. Iran is the name.
Iran is the original name.
Okay.
So people of Iran have always been calling their land Iran, which came from the word Aryan or Aryan, whichever way you pronounce it.
Aryan, yeah.
So then in 1935, Iran was declared as a country.
Yeah.
1936, 8th of January, Reza Shah, the monarch, he declared that all hijabs are banned. Anybody who is seen wearing a hijab is going to be arrested, or their hijabs will be taken off by the moral police.
Wow.
The moral police will be going around from neighborhood to neighborhood, city to city, looking at women's attire.
Wow.
And he also declared that there was a mandate for men to wear bowler hats. European style bowler hats, and they'll all have to wear that. So men were furious.
Wow.
Oh, this is a good move, banning the hijab. But
why are you putting us in a hijab?
They also protested. So among the women, there was a split. The elderly women, they said that what is the problem with the hijab? It is our cultural thing, because they had already internalized it. So, and young Iranian women were so happy with the move.
Yeah.
So there were actually these scenes of moral police women, big groups of women. They would go from door to door. They would knock on the doors and see who opens the door. If there's a woman with a hijab, they would take the hijab off. So a lot of women, elderly women, would lock themselves at home to avoid
not be caught with the hijab. Wow.
So this went on till 1941, and women were very happy. In 1941, the Soviets and the British, they used their intelligence operatives to enter Iran, and they caused a palace coup. So what was the palace coup? Reza Shah's son, Mohammad Reza Shah, they had already groomed Mohammad Reza Shah as their puppet to remove the dad.
Okay.
So he went against the father with the support of the Soviets and the British. He removed the father from power. He came to power.
Okay.
So the second era began of the kingdom. And he gradually declared that, okay, now everybody can, there is no such law. It is not mandatory, but it is not banned either. You guys can go back to wearing the hijab. So the hijab again culturally flowed back into the system. And Iran being a largely patriarchal society, it is a very patriarchal society. Despite the resilience and the culture and art and all that, it is still
deeply
a
patriarchal.
very deeply patriarchal society. So the hijab came into the system again. It stayed on like that.
Because people wanted it. The patriarchy wanted
50% of the population wanted it, the men. So then in 1979, the so-called revolution happened. Then in 1981, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the first Ayatollah, he brought in a lot of laws. He said that now women cannot do this, cannot do that. They have to wear the hijab. So flashing the hair is
not okay.
It's not done at all. You'll be arrested, you'll be killed, this and that. So all these rules were rolled out at that time in 1981. So this story is very interesting. I mean, think
I mean,
about the women who lived through that period, who enjoyed that period in Iran between 1936 and 1941.
Yeah, I mean, they would be no more now probably, or
Yeah.
you know, but they saw from a hijab-driven country
Yeah.
to a non-hijab,
Yeah.
and while they must have been living in their towards their end, they
Yeah.
again saw it coming back.
Exactly. And by the way, a lot of men also died during clashes with the police who protested over the bowler hat law. They did not want to wear the bowler hat, so they protested. There were fights and there were deaths also.
Imagine, what are we losing lives over? The scarves and the hats.
Just imagine.
India seems to be close to US.
Yeah.
One of the allies, right? So does India's closeness with US affect its relationship with Israel in the current scenario with Iran?
These relationships, in international relationships, they don't happen in black and white. You know, these are all gray relationships because every country has various types of bilateral relationships, and they also have bargaining chips against each other, right? So, and they need each other for various things. They don't agree with everything, and they agree with many other things. So that is how they operate. So, for example, just because Israel and Iran have been at war does not mean that India has to now think about resetting its relationship. Should we go completely with Israel? Should we completely go with Iran? Should we completely go with the US? It can never be like that. They have to walk, on a very fine line. Yeah. Because you need everybody to be around. Like, for example, India is significant over here because India imports a lot of oil and gas from Iran.
Yeah.
So ideally, India shouldn't have been importing oil from Iran, right? But it does not happen that way. India still imports oil from Iran, and do you know how it pays Iran? Because of the sanctions, India cannot pay Iran in no currency. You cannot pay Iran in dollars. You have to pay in other currencies, either the rupees or in gold or in euros or in any other currencies. So what India does is, when it imports oil from Iran, so there is a UCO Bank branch in the city of Kolkata, which is meant for this arrangement of buying oil from Iran. So India puts that money, that payment, places it in that account, in that UCO Bank account in Kolkata. So Iran knows about it. So Iran is told by India that, okay, your money is here in our territory, but it is your money. You have given us the oil. Now, when we let's do something like a barter. So when we send you something, you don't have to pay us. We will deduct it from there. So that will be the adjustment system. So this is how it works. This is one arrangement. Another arrangement is, there's an arrangement where Turkey is kind of an exchange. It's an informal gold exchange. So if India imports oil from Iran and it wants to pay in gold, then it sends rupees to Iran, that is converted to gold. That gold is sent to Iran. So that is how it works.
Now, it gets Turkey to
send the gold to Iran.
Send the gold to
Iran.
So
the payment gets completed, and you have bypassed the dollar. You have also not antagonized the US by
it didn't rub it the wrong way.
By directly going against the US or something. You are just doing it in a very calm way. You are saying that, boss, we just have to do this in a very small way.
Yeah.
That's it. So that is how it works.
You also mentioned in your book about, I didn't know this at all, that the US had banned Iran from having its own payment gateway, payment system.
They had cut off Iran from SWIFT. SWIFT is the US operated the easy money transfer system. So they had cut off.
Since it's US, they can cut off. Fine. Okay. That unka hai, wo nahi de rahe.
But cutting off here, it also hampers Iran's transactions with the rest of the world, no? Because the rest of the world uses SWIFT.
Yeah. But has it also banned Iran from developing its own system? Or because what I read in your book was that Iran is waiting for any other
they actually
country
have
to develop it.
They actually have been lobbying for this for a long time. They have been telling Germany, France, UK to do something. Let's have an alternative arrangement. So European Union and Iran, they came up with a kind of an alternative arrangement. It's called INSTEX. Okay. So INSTEX it's the alternative to SWIFT, where Iran could buy certain essentials from European countries for an exchange for money, or in a barter way something would be done. I mean, oil for essentials. Some kind of an arrangement like that where this instrument would be used, Instex.
So it exists.
It exists, but not in a very robust way. If it becomes too robust, then US intelligence will go after it.
So it is not being used fully. It cannot be used fully.
Iran's economy is genuinely suffering because of the sanctions. A lot of people don't get to see sanctions as a war. Sanctions is a silent war. It's a very dangerous war.
So silent.
Yeah. Why do we very easily focus on physical wars? Because they are very spectacular to watch. You see bombs, you see planes, you see physical things happening, you see the news also covering it. Sanctions, you don't get to see that. Like in Iraq before the 2003 invasion by the US-UK forces, there were so many sanctions on medicines for children, medicines for infants.
Oh my God.
So hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children actually died because of lack of basic medicines, basic medication, and basic, surgery equipment also. That is because of the sanctions. So that was the trouble that Iraq was going through. And the purpose of the sanctions was for the Western world to antagonize the people of Iraq to go against Saddam Hussein. So there would be a point of time when parents in Iraq would say that, oh, we don't like Saddam because of this guy in power, we are not getting these essentials for our kids. Our kids are dying.
Yeah.
So if he's taken out by an invasion, then invaders are welcome.
Yeah. So, it's very, very normal for public to do that.
Yeah. The sanctions war keeps happening. There's another kind of war that the US wages on Iran is they targetedly kill scientists in Iran. Every year, some scientists, especially nuclear scientists of the other, they're always taken out. Someone or the other. Nuclear scientists, any other kind of scientists, important researchers who make, game-changing discoveries or inventions and all that, they are taken out. So these wars also,
they are the ones who
it's not just the bombing. It's the silent bombing also that is a kind of oppression that happens.
When you're saying that, I'm visualizing all these wars that we are currently witnessing all around us. And yes, they're very visual. We get to see.
We will see more conflicts, unfortunately. That is because since US imperialism's absolute power is now waning a little bit. Not entirely. It's not. You will hear a lot of people say that the US is going to fall in the coming years and China will become the new empire. That is going to happen long time from now. Maybe 70 years from now or maybe 100 years from now. Not right away. What's happening right now is US is losing its power of the absolute king of the world. So that is waning a little bit. And China is coming up very slowly with the other players on board. So that is why we are seeing these flashpoints happen. Like, for example, even petrodollar is a very important thing over here because it's not just Iran, Iraq or Libya. Many other countries are now going against the US dollar.
Yeah.
It's called De-Dollarization.
Yeah.
So it's also now surfacing in the news as well.
Yeah.
So like even India is part of it. India, Russia, China, many other countries, Turkey. So they are trading a lot of things with each other in their own currencies and in gold.
Not fully, but partially.
Yeah. They are not fully bypassing the dollar.
Yeah.
The dollar is still very strong.
Yeah.
I think about 51% to 52% of global transactions still happen in the US dollar. And forex transactions, they are more than 90% in US dollars. But all that used to be almost 100% at one point of time.
So that much leeway has happened.
So this is the scale in which the US power is waning. So, but still they are kind of startled. So we cannot let our...
that's too much. That from 100%, anything that goes lesser is worrisome.
So that's why they go after these countries. That's why North Korea is a villain. Who is North Korea to threaten the world? They can't even threaten Russia in their backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, they're a nuclear power. They can do anything. They can't do anything. They won't do anything.
And again, like what you said, who has actually used their nuclear power so far? Nobody except US.
Yeah. And that too twice.
Yeah.
You could say if they had used only once, you could say that they dropped the bomb, then they realized that it is too big. We did not know it's going to be so devastating. We are not going to do it again. It's not like that. They did it twice in a span of 3 days.
So they all absolutely know and they're absolutely okay with what it does.
They have about 5,100 plus nuclear weapons today, the US. Russia has 5,400 plus. And then come the rest of the countries. India has 180. Pakistan has 170. North Korea has only 50. And if Iran builds its capacity to full, Iran can only have 5 or 10 bombs at the most. So what are we talking about? Someone with 5,100 nuclear weapons is scared about North
Somebody
Korea's
with
50
50.
and Iran's 0. So
can you help us understand what is the cost of war that any of us pay, no matter where the war is happening?
I personally feel the biggest cost, which is incalculable, is that the public, is that the masses, they themselves are, psychologically weaponized to be part of the war, to take a side. Not to be part of the war in a physical sense, but to take a side, to either support a war that shouldn't be taking place, or to take sides in a certain way which is parochial, which is just one-sided. So people are misled, people are weaponized, people are misused, and as a result of that, they also get caught in the crossfire. Right. Today, there are a lot of people who are saying that we should go to war with Pakistan and we should decimate them and we can take their bullets and all that. Can the same people go and safely travel in Kashmir right now? They cannot do that if they want to.
That's the cost.
Yeah, that's the cost. Your freedoms, that's the cost. And another thing that people need to realize is that it's very difficult to realize because the mainstream media will not tell them to realize this, is that all these conflicts are not for them. They are told that conflicts happen for them. It is for you that we are doing this. It is not for them. It is only for the power elites. But none of these wars are for you.
Not for us.
No, absolutely
not for any of us.
Absolutely.
We're being used.
We are being used. Used, misused, whatever
all
is
of
the
it.
better word. Yeah.
So I guess on the closing note for now, I guess what is very important for us is to stay informed and not get influenced as much as possible. Is that what you would say? What's your message? What's your thing for people who are listening to it, who are going to be people like you and me? But itna sab jaan liya, what can we do?
See, my message would be again to say that, to tell people that be better informed, that's also a kind of a catch for them. Because people have to realize that they have to stop believing in everything. We have too much. Unfortunately, we are living in times when we are over-informed. And not just over-informed, we are over-disinformed and over-misinformed.
Yeah.
So the scope to come out of it's very difficult.
It's so over-controlled.
It cannot be done by other sources of information. So it can only come from within.
Yeah. वो कहावत सुनिए, there are no free lunches. इस कॉन्वर्सेशन में बिल्कुल फिट बैठती है. जब कोई चीज़ फ्री होती है, हमें कोई चीज़ फ्री मिलती है, तो उसमें हम ही प्रोडक्ट होते हैं, हम ही यूज़ करे जा रहे होते हैं. और इंटरनेट के टाइम में जब हमें सब कुछ लिटरली फ्री दिखता है, तो प्रोडक्ट कौन है? हम, आप. और इस वक्त जियोपॉलिटिक्स के मौसम में जब सब जगह लड़ाइयाँ हो रही हैं, सब जगह वॉर्स हो रहे हैं, इतने भयंकर वॉर्स हो रहे हैं, तो अगर हमें ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम घर में बैठ के उस पर कमेंट मार पा रहे हैं, या हम कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन सुन के हमें लग रहा है कि ओ अब ये मुझे पता चल गया, फला ने बोला था इसलिए ये सही बात है. और जैसे नदीम ने बोला कि स्टॉप बिलीविंग एवरीथिंग दैट यू आर सीइंग, स्टार्ट वेरीफाइंग. यही बात कही थी हमारे पॉडकास्ट पे विजेता दहिया ने, जो कि अगेन एक रिसर्चर हैं, एक कंटेंट क्रिएटर हैं, और वो खुद इंटरनेट को यूज़ करते हैं अपनी रिसर्च के लिए, अपने कंटेंट के लिए. लेकिन वो खुद कहते हैं कि जब तक वो सोर्स बहुत ही वेरीफाइड ना हो, बहुत ही क्रेडिबल नहीं हो, आप नहीं बात कर सकते उसको कोट नहीं कर सकते, आप उसको फाइनल अथॉरिटी नहीं मान सकते. सो यू मस्ट लिसन टू विजेता दहिया. व्हाट अ प्रोफाउंड पर्सन दैट ही इज. Second podcast that is a must on Flirting with the Fish is of Iqbal Malhotra. Again, a filmmaker, an author, an expert, जो कि उन लोगों के साथ उठते बैठते हैं अपनी डेली लाइफ में, जो इन कॉन्वर्सेशंस के पीछे होते हैं. तो एक उनका सोर्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन है, उन लोगों के साथ उठना बैठना जो इस बातों के पीछे हैं. इससे ज़्यादा ऑथेंटिक और क्या होगा? और फिर उनकी खुद की समझ इतने सालों की, और उनका वो एक सोचने का तरीका जिसमें वो 2+2 को सोचते हैं, इज इट रियली 4? सो दैट that podcast is talking about, again, the geopolitics, the politics of water, the politics of India and Pakistan, the politics of Iran. It's a very, very verified information that we bring to you. I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. Let us know if there's any other topic, any other guest that you want us to cover. We'll try our best. Keep floating with the fish.